President Trump giving up on the GOP health care bill after House Republicans decided not to put it up for a vote. Vice President Mike Pence today putting the blame on Democrats and a small group of Republicans in Congress. Listen.
As we all learned yesterday, Congress just wasn't ready. You saw it. With 100% of House Democrats, every single one, and a handful of Republicans actually standing in the way of President Trump's plan to repeal and replace Obamacare. We're back to the drawing board.
Back to the drawing board it is. Congressman Bruce Westerman of Arkansas was in support of the bill. He joins us now. All right, first I want you to explain to us your initial reluctance on the American Health Care Act before coming to support the legislation.
Well, Julie, greetings from beautiful Arkansas today. It's great to be with you. I'm glad to be back home.
Thanks for having. Yeah, thanks for coming on. So what was it that initially made you reluctant? And then initially you actually said that when leaders in the Republican Party introduced the American Health Care Act that you were not sold on the legislation, but then you changed your mind.
Yeah, and it's part of the process. We looked at the bill, looked at what was in it and what was not in it. I'm very passionate about block grants and work requirements, and we had a very constructive debate about that. We talked about it in the Budget Committee. I was able to visit with leadership on it. We got some language drafted, went over and met with President Trump, and we got those things in the bill. That's the way the process is supposed to work. So I'm extremely glad that I was able to be a part of a constructive process, and I think the worst thing about not voting yesterday is that it ended the process or delayed the process.
Right.
I was disappointed. I was disappointed yesterday, but you know, I got up early this morning and went out fishing with my youngest son, and I saw the sun come up, and I thought, it's a new day. We can't be discouraged. We've got to continue to work, and we got to get this process back on the right track.
You know, even if there had been a vote and it had passed, once it got to the Senate, you know, there was talk that it wouldn't make it past that, and then it would have to then go back, and it would have to, and that is what happens when these bills are proposed. I mean, they do have to go back and forth. The fact that there was no vote at all, it doesn't really give it much room to go anywhere. And as the Trump administration now has said, we're just going to let Obamacare explode and move on to tax reform. Is that the right attitude?
No, I think we can't give up on health care right now. And again, the Senate is part of the process. And when you look at the constraints on the process, and everybody has to realize there are limitations, I think Harry Callahan said it best, a man's got to understand his limitations. And this process has limitations. There are certain things that the House can do through budget reconciliation, and there's certain things the Senate can do. I think we need to get as much in it in the House and get it over to the Senate and let the senators, who have a whole lot more flexibility in budget reconciliation, work on the bill.
So what happens next now that the battle moves to the Department of Health and Human Services, led by longtime ACA opponent, Dr. Tom Price?
Well, I don't think we could have a better person running Health and Human Services. He was chairman of the Budget Committee that I serve on.
Right.
But you know, I think getting back to the health care debate, when I look at it, I think there was kind of a rectangular negotiation between the White House, House leadership, and then two groups in the GOP conference. You had the Tuesday group, who wanted a less restrictive bill, and you had the Freedom Caucus, who wanted a more restrictive bill. So I think what we need to do is get those two groups together, the House Freedom Caucus and the Tuesday group, let them work out the differences. The administration and House leadership shouldn't take a bad rap on this. They worked extremely hard, I think went the extra effort, and we just couldn't come to a conclusion within the House conference. So if we can get these two groups working together, I think if they can come up with something they can agree with, then go back to leadership in the White House, I think we can still get this done.
The conservatives didn't think that this thing differed much from Obamacare, and that was a big problem because for 7 years Republicans have been pushing to repeal and replace this thing. You know, right out of the bat, Rand Paul came forward. He had some ideas, but there wasn't really ever a real solid plan, it seems, that seemed to stick.
Yeah, well, we need to get the bill over in the Senate so Rand can make his suggestions and he can have a constructive debate about it. But you know, I think it's like we've built the house and we're arguing over the floor covering and the drapes right now. We've got a good start to a great bill with what we can do in reconciliation. And I think there's one issue that's left hanging out there that could unite both the Freedom Caucus and the Tuesday group. And that is this tax credit issue. When we talked about it in the budget issue, or in the budget committee, there were people from Freedom Caucus and
Right.
Tuesday Group that voted for the resolution to get that out. We even had Democrats that are supporting doing something with the tax credit. So I think that's something that we can do, maybe change the credit to a deduction for higher income and make it means tested to help those 50 to 60-year-olds who the way the credit's set up right now would hurt them. So
No,
I think there's a solution out there.
Yeah, it seemed that they needed a little more of a push. I mean, that was sort of in the 11th hour. Conservatives tried to come out with this tax credit, which would essentially mean the government would give billions, tens of billions of dollars in order for these tax credits to be applied for those who were worried that their health care costs would go up, especially that senior group. If you look at the way
the way health care works right now, anybody that buys their insurance through anybody that buys their insurance through a group plan, they get a tax deduction. If you're buying an individual plan, you don't get a deduction. So the credit is to help those lower income people, and it's really to make it equitable and level the playing field.
All right. Congressman Bruce Westerman, great to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. Great to be with you.
Great to see you.